Hello everyone. Welcome to the second session of OAuth with Access Manager. In this session, we are going to use a client application, OAuth client application, which is called LetsOAuth. You can use any other client application also. Uh, we we also have something called OAuth Playground, which you can use. You can also use the Google Playground. Um, and also we have if you go to the access manager documentation, and if you go to the developer documentation, there you can see the OAuth samples, which has some curl scripts that you can use. You can also use the postmaster to make the request, to make the OAuth request. Uh, what document you need to refer when you use any of the other tools is OAuth and OpenID connector guide, which talks about the different endpoints and different options available with the OAuth. The client application LetsOAuth can be deployed uh, as a Tomcat application, and also as you can deploy it on a PHP enabled web server. So we will go and see how to deploy it first as a Tomcat application. Um, the Tomcat web server which I am using for this session is going to be the Access Manager admin console, but you can actually deploy it anywhere, any Tomcat web server. To deploy the LetsOAuth web application, you can you need to take the LetsOAuth.var and copy to the directory opt novel nam admin console web apps of admin console. So I will copy this here. So once you copy this, uh, Tomcat will automatically detect it and it will extract it as a folder LetsOAuth. Go inside the folder LetsOAuth, and you can see there is a file letsoauth.html. This is the kind of the very first file which we are going to access. Um, and it has folders like CSS used in this tool, the HTML pages, and the JSP. So the very first thing you need to do is if you check this file, it has references of the IDP server. So you need to replace these references using your real IDP server which you are going to use. So what IDP server I'm going to use is msync23lab.novel.com, and port is 8443. So we need to replace those value here with if you do this, this will replace all the references. The same thing you need to do in the folder HTML. Execute the same command. So it will replace this location everywhere. Okay. The next thing we are going to do to access this application. So this is how this application is going to be deployed. And after this, we can go ahead and access the application. So that would be your admin console URL and the port you need to use LetsOAuth. This is the URL you are going to use. Just put a LetsOAuth at the end of the admin console, IP address and port. When you enter that, you can see this kind of page will appear, and it will provide the different options which we are going to use uh, during this whole session of OAuth with Access Manager. You can also deploy the OAuth application onto a PHP enabled web server. So to do that, what you need to do, you can use this WAR file, use any archive software to unzip it, and then copy the same folder, LetsOAuth folder, to the to your web server, and then you can access with this is my Apache web server where I have put this folder LetsOAuth, and if I enter, I can get this structure, and you can click on the letsoauth.html to access it. So there are two ways. Either you can use a Tomcat server where you can deploy this, or you can deploy the same thing on a web server. So the only difference what you need to see is when you are deploying this on the Tomcat web server like admin console or IDP or any Tomcat application, there is a folder here in this structure which is called the JSP folder, and it has a file called oauth response.jsp. This JSP file will basically take the response from the IDP server and print it for you on the browser screen. But if you are, this works fine if you are using a Tomcat application. But if you are using a plain web server, the JSP will not work. So what you can do there, in place of using the JSP file, you can create a PHP file and give it a name like oauth response.php and use that particular file to see that. We'll just quickly see how we can do that. Let's copy this file as or copy this file as response.php. So the content of this file is nothing but to just print all the PHP related information. You can customize it very well. So once this is done, if you go to on the web server, if you go to LetsOAuth folder, this file you are going to access to get the OAuth responses from the IDP server. But for this session, we are not going to use the Apache deployment. We are going to use the Tomcat application deployment. You are free to use what suits best for you. Okay, so the next thing what we are going to do, we will create a client application in admin console for LetsOAuth. So we have a client application, LetsOAuth, and we need to do a representation of this client or an entry for this client in the admin console. So to do that, go to your admin console and go to OAuth OpenID Connect. The first thing what we'll do, we'll just make sure the global setting is something like this, where we will select almost all the option. authorization grant LDAP attribute will be NIDS OAuth grant, which we did on the first session. Course domain, select as none, select all the grant type and keep the default values. For contracts for resource owner credential authentication, we will take the secure name password form and go ahead and update this. Once this is updated, we will go and create a client application. To create a client application, you need to click on this button, which is register new client, and give the name the application. Let's keep it as a web-based. The redirect URL, you can basically, the redirect URL what you need to take is the JSP file URL. If let me show you. So this is the URL which we are going to use as the redirect URL. So if you see, this is the URL of the JSP file from the JSP folder. But if you are using the Tomcat, if you are deploying this application on the web server, you need to use the PHP file which we have created. That's the only difference. So as we are going to use the Tomcat deployment, we will use this particular URL. And let's access and verify if we are accessing the correct URL. Okay, so we are getting a page, it means it is working. So this URL will be the one where IDP is going to send the response. Okay. And then go ahead and register the client, and there are various options here which we can see later when we are going to actually create the multiple options, and we are going to check the different features of the OAuth. But for the time being, just go ahead and click register client, and this client is registered here with the admin console, but this information is not available to the IDP right now. So to do that, we need to click on the OK and update the identity server. Once you update the identity server, all the information will go to the IDP, and IDP will recognize this client. So the client application is created in admin console. Now we can go and verify this client application in the admin console configuration store. This is the same step we have done in the first session. We'll do that again. So go to your Apache Directory Studio, connect with the admin console, go to Novel, Access Manager Container, NIDS, cluster, select the cluster, verify you are using the correct cluster, and then under cluster, look at the object which starts with O. There is one object which starts with O, but it is NIDS organization, we'll leave it. The another which starts with O is this one, which says NIDS OAuth container. So this is the place where we are going to look. Go and click. This is OAuth tenants, OAuth scopes, OAuth clients container. So we will go inside this container where all the clients are there, and we will check if we have created, okay, so we can see there is one client application is created. We will verify, click on the file NIDS OAuth client XML, edit as text, can see what is value of this. So this is the XML file over there. So you can see client name is LetsOAuth. So this is the client which we have created. So whenever you create a client application, you basically create this kind of XML configuration there, where there is a ID for this client application, which is called the client ID. There is a client secret, and there are the different values which we have selected. We have also selected configure the redirect URL list, which is the JSP file in case of Tomcat application, but it would be the PHP for Apache or any web server. Yes. So once we have done this step, we know the client application is created. Now we will go ahead and access this application using browser. So to do that, you need to type the admin console URL or your Tomcat container URL. My admin console IP is this, and it's running on this port. And then you have to type LetsOAuth. When you click this, you can see this kind of a web page, says the OAuth endpoint. So we are going to take one by one in the different session about the different things which we can do with the Access Manager. It has a rich set of collection here which we can use to leverage almost everything in the Access Manager. And that we will do in different session. But for this session, we will just go and check this particular link. It says the OpenID metadata endpoint. OpenID metadata endpoint is basically the endpoint where all the information related to OAuth is kept. This basically, when you click on this link, you can see at the bottom that it says that it is NIDP OAuth NAM well-known OpenID configuration. Look at your browser left hand side at the bottom. So let's go and click on this. So based on the what browser you are using, you can get the different kind of display, but this, I'm using Firefox, so you will see this kind of display here. You're free to use any browser. So now you can see this actually represent the different endpoint of IDP access of the OAuth module in the identity server. It also provides what are the different capability of this OAuth module, which is with the Access Manager. The first thing says the issuer. Who is the issuer? So this is the URL which will come as a issuer. Issuer means the issuer who is going to provide you the different access token or refresh token or all those things. Authorization endpoint. So here it will talk about what are the different endpoint we are going to use. So we know that in OAuth there is a grant called the authorization code grant. So we are going to use this one. So we will talk about this when we go through one by one different features of the OAuth. It has a JWS URI registration endpoint where you can use this endpoint to register any client to the in place of manually registering from admin console. You can basically write a REST call and to register using the REST APIs. So that this one we are going to use. It is also showing what all the different scopes this particular Access Manager is capable of providing. So as you know that we have not done any modification with respect to the scope or the resource server or anything. It's all the default things which comes with the installation. So you can see something like this. For this session, we will go with the default, but to, in future, I will make one video where we will talk about how to customize, how to create your own resource server, how to create your own scopes and all those stuff. But in coming sessions, we will use whatever the default thing Access Manager provides. So if you see by default, it supports these many scopes. Okay, we are going to use the scope which is called profile in the coming session. Response type supported. What are the different response type of the tokens are supported? We will talk about it. Response mode. So you remember we talked about the OAuth response.jsp file where all the OAuth responses will go, but in the way IDP will send that response will depend on this particular mode. If it is a query, it will go as a query string. If it has to go as a form post or as a fragment. The different grant type which this particular uh, Access Manager supports. So these values are basically coming from the global configuration. If you remember, we have selected everything in the global configuration. In the global configuration, we have selected RS256 as a signing algorithm. You can quickly go and have a look. You can see this here. And also the different kind of claims which are supported. These are all the claims and the scopes. What you see, it is coming from the default resource server. If you click on the resource server, there is a already configured identity provider resource server. If you go inside that, you can see scopes, and you can see the different kind of scopes are here. And you can see the different scopes and what all the if I go to the scope profile which I'm going to use for my session, you can basically see what all attributes are related to this particular scope. So I would suggest, if you are going to use a user for the OAuth, just fill couple of these attributes for that user, like male or the middle name, given name, gender, and all those things. Okay. The next endpoint which we will talk is, so if you have noticed, whenever you click on any of this link, this will basically going to open a new page in the tab. So if you are continuously using it, it is possible that this browser will be full with multiple tabs. So I suggest you use it. When it is not in use, you just close that tab. Okay, the another one is the JSON web key set endpoint. If you click on that link, you can see the URL what we are accessing. It talks about the what kind of algorithm is going to use, and what's the different thing is going to be used with the signing of the OAuth token. So whenever NAM will provide a token, it is basically going to use this particular endpoint, and a client application can use this endpoint to get all this information, so that if Access Manager is signing a token and sending to the client application can verify those signature of the token. So you can see the algorithm use this RS256, and this is X5C, which says that what are the certificate is being used, and this contains the full chain. The 0 number is the top level, the certificate which is going to be used, and the 1 number will be its intermediate or the top level of certificate. So if you go to your admin console, global setting, you can see under the signing certificate there is a certificate assigned which is test signing. So this is the same certificate, test signing. And this value number 1 is the issuer of that certificate. So you can see the whole chain. Okay, so this particular tool is written in the plain HTML, so you don't need any expertise to basically work with this. You can also customize it as it is using plain HTML. You can customize the way you want. So if you want to customize this tool, you can basically go to your wherever you have deployed this, and you can actually see the file. This is the main HTML which we access, and it shows our the main page. You can customize this, and also you can go to the HTML, and it contains all the pages which is you are going to access when you click one of the link here. So for example, if you click on the get authorization code flow step 1, you will get a web page something like this. Okay, so these web page basically represent what value you need to pass to the IDP server in order to this particular feature to work. Okay, these are the very minimal options which is required, the different values which is required for things to work. But if you can customize if you want to check something which is not here. So for example, you can basically go and view the source, and you can see this kind of particular form is created here. If you go and check source of this, you can see what happens when you click that. When you click this one, it calls when you click on this link, it calls the file HTML oauthcode.html. So you can go to its HTML file, and you can basically either add or remove the different options which you want to check. So this form contains some of the thing which we are going to test, but there are multiple options you can actually add it here. And how do you know what value you need to add and what new options to add? For that, you can actually refer the documentation where it talks about the different ways, like for example, authorization endpoints. So these are the different options here. We are using some of them in the tutorial, but you can basically you can customize this web page, this HTML pages, and use any one of them with respect to learning. You can also, whenever you work with this tool, you can actually also use the developer tool as well, and go to the network, and basically you can check what all different things are doing. So if I go for the authorization code and I fill this form and send, you can do you can go to the developer tool, and you can basically see what values we are posting. You can also use Fiddler to capture it. So there are many ways to just understand what exactly it has done when you are using this particular send button. Okay, so this was about how we are going to use this tool in the whole session. From the next session, we are going to start one by one the different grant and the different feature of Access Manager. We are not going to deep of the Access Manager. We are not going to the deep into the OAuth concepts, but I will just give you a very basic ideas of what we are doing. Like for example, authorization code, we will just talk about what is the authorization code and what is the authorization code grant and how it works. The similar with the implicit, hybrid flow, OpenID Connect. So we are going to talk a little bit, and then run our tool to see what happens when we use those kind of different features. Thank you.